Hi, I'm Sharon Reich Garson in New Jersey. It's Saturday, October 25th. Today, the U.S. sends more firepower to the Caribbean Ocean. Trump departs for Asia, hoping for a China deal, but is in no mood to talk to Canada as the Toronto Blue Jays take on the LA Dodgers in the World Series. And in Ivory Coast, former enemies say "I do" as the nation heads to the polls. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes, 7 days a week. President Donald Trump's administration is escalating a U.S. military buildup, sending an aircraft carrier to Latin America. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro saying they're making up a new eternal war.
Se están inventando una nueva guerra eterna.
At the same time, the U.S. is sanctioning Colombian President Gustavo Petro, accusing him of refusing to stop the flow of cocaine into the United States. In a post on X, Petro pushed back, calling it a lie. He says his government has seized the most cocaine in world history. Over to Asia. Top economic officials from the U.S. and China are in Kuala Lumpur, trying to keep the trade war from escalating and to pave the way for a meeting between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Trump is threatening 100% tariffs on Chinese goods starting November 1st. That's in retaliation for China's expanded export controls on rare earth magnets and minerals. The goal this week: interim relief on tariffs, tech controls, and on Chinese purchases of U.S. soybeans. But even as Washington looks to dial things down with Beijing, it's not warming up to Canada. Before taking off for Asia,
You meet with Prime Minister Carney during this trip?
I don't have any intention of it, no.
the talks halted over an anti-tariff advertisement issued by Ontario's provincial government. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says the ad will keep running during the World Series between the Toronto Blue Jays and LA Dodgers so it can reach a bigger U.S. audience. Maria Cheng covers Canadian politics.
So Doug Ford, when he was explaining the reasoning for the ad earlier this week, he specifically said that they chose Ronald Reagan, who he regards to be the most effective president in U.S. history, because he wanted to appeal to Trump's base and make it clear that the MAGA movement has diverged somewhat from the Republican Party that Ronald Reagan led. Before Carney got on the plane to leave for Asia, he addressed the trade issues and said that Canada needs to focus on what it can control. It can't control what the U.S. does, but he wants to very much focus on strengthening Canada's ties beyond the U.S.
And speaking of the World Series, the Toronto Blue Jays have crashed baseball's biggest party for the first time in 32 years. Tonight, the team take on the LA Dodgers in Game 2 of the World Series. And in Game 1, the Blue Jays beat the Dodgers 11-4. But with political tensions running high between Canada and the U.S., this matchup is about more than baseball. Sports reporter Frank Pingway is in Toronto.
Oh, this is absolutely a major moment, not just in Toronto, but in Canada, because if the Toronto Blue Jays can somehow upset the Los Angeles Dodgers and become World Series champions in a sport that has long been considered America's pastime, it would just be celebrated across a country whose economy has come under intense strain this year, given the impact of the tariffs that have been put on Canadian exports to the United States. So this is a way for sports fans to kind of get back at the United States.
Tickets sold out within an hour, and on resale sites, premium seats are going for more than 10,000 Canadian dollars. The Trump administration says it's reached a deal with Liberia to accept Kilmar Abrego. Abrego was wrongfully deported to El Salvador, which became a flashpoint in Trump's immigration crackdown. Liberia says the move is temporary and is strictly on humanitarian grounds. His lawyer says Abrego has no connection to Liberia and that the move was designed to inflict maximum hardship. Now to Turkey, whose President Tayyip Erdogan helped persuade Hamas to accept Trump's Gaza deal. The move has boosted Ankara's diplomatic clout, leaving Israel and its Arab rivals uneasy. Trump's calling Erdogan a reliable ally, and now that Turkey's gained leverage, it's pushing for F-35 fighter jets, fewer sanctions, and more influence in Syria. Back home, Erdogan's touting his role in the ceasefire as a major win. Tufan Gümrükçü covers foreign policy in Turkey.
Erdogan wants to position himself where he's able to essentially have a bigger say at the table in terms of regional matters, but he's also aware that with the second largest army in NATO, Turkey is a major force in the region. As we know, Hamas has issues because of equipment, so it can't excavate all of the bodies that have been stuck under rubble for many, many months. And so Turkey has experience with this, with search and rescue operations, and wants to contribute to this. So what we're anticipating is that Turkey will have more of a civilian rather than military presence here.
Over to Ivory Coast, where voters head to the polls today for a presidential election. More than a decade ago, the country was ripped apart by civil war. The conflict killed thousands and split communities along ethnic lines. And in Dukoué, the site of one of the worst massacres, something interesting is taking place. Former enemies are marrying each other. West Africa Bureau Chief Rabi Kori Boulay has been following how an NGO is helping couples move beyond their country's violent past.
Limbia is an NGO that's based in Dukoué that's trying to, after the war, promote reconciliation between ethnic groups that are seen as rivals. And one of the ways it's done that is by forming these youth clubs where people from across town can come together. And as a result of that, people from these different groups started dating. Martinez and Isabel, they're one of the initial couples, started dating right after the war and told their parents they intended to get married. And this caused a furor in both of their homes. And this couple, she's a ballet woman, now married to a Guere man. Her parents went so far as to tell her that Guere are cannibals, which is not true. But it took some time to convince them otherwise and to bring the families together and eventually get them to a point where they could celebrate their wedding together. They really take it upon themselves to be public about their relationship, trying to demonstrate that these marriages are workable and good for the community and good for their families.
President Ouattara is running for a fourth term. He's widely expected to win, and these mixed marriages, will locals see them as helping keep the peace while votes are cast?
One thing that he's been faulted for in some circles is not promoting transitional justice and reconciliation in the ways that some groups would like to see. And so the idea is that these marriages are an example of ground level reconciliation that could limit any tensions that might erupt between various groups during the course of voting.
And today, we have a recommended listen. Our On Assignment podcast is out, and in this episode, we travel to Syria. Our reporters share the incredible story of how they discovered a secret mass grave there and the vast operation to move thousands of bodies across the desert to cover up years of atrocities. Here's reporter Maggie Michael describing what one Syrian car mechanic saw one night when he was doing repairs on a suspicious truck.
One day he jumped inside the truck and he saw many bodies inside the truck. And then he questioned and asked questions to the drivers, and one of them told him these bodies are coming from Qutaifa, which is one of the biggest mass graves in Syria.
We'll put a link to that in our pod description. For more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on a smart speaker, just ask for the latest news from Reuters, 7 days a week. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.